Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by NERC, the Northeast Recycling Council, about material reuse. It's the Forum 7, Unpacking Reverse Logistics. The webinar will show how reverse logistics is a vital part of the circular economy, focusing on moving goods from customers back to sellers or manufacturers. This process plays a key role in managing surplus and returns to enable large-scale reuse. We will have experts discussing economics, systems, challenges, and opportunities of reverse logistics. You get insights into how surplus and return goods are handled and their role in driving sustainability within retail operations. So I'm Mariani Medeiros. I'm the Senior Project Manager at the Northeast Recycling Council. And before we get started, I'd like to review some housekeeping details. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. A recording of the webinar and a copy of the presentations of our speakers will be available on the NERC website, and you will receive an email with the link for it. Please use the chat to ask any questions for the presenters, which we'll get to those questions once the speakers are finished. We have great presenters this afternoon from Home Depot, Replenish, Colorado State University, as well as University of Minnesota. I'll pass it off to our moderator now, Kathy Mirza, who is the branch chief of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and good morning to those who are joining us from different time zones. I'm dialing in from Boston and happy to welcome all of you from across the country this afternoon or today. Thank you for joining us for today's forum. This is the seventh reuse forum that has been presented by NERC. And as Mariani mentioned, my name is Kathy Mirza. I am the branch chief for municipal waste reduction programs at the Mass DEP. And I'm part of the planning team for these NERC reuse forums. As mentioned, I'll be your moderator today. And for those who are joining us for the first time, NERC coordinates these free quarterly forums where we're working to build a diverse community of reuse practitioners from across the U.S. so that we can work together to advance the reuse of durable items. We really want to break down the silos within our work and invite people from all different sectors to this conversation so we can better understand and learn about opportunities to retain the value of products that are already in circulation. So this is really all about reuse. We have 4 guest speakers who will be providing presentations today, and we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers after that. So let's move right into our first speaker. I'd like to introduce Dr. Zach Rogers. If you'd like to bring your presentation up, that would be great. And I will read your brief bio. Dr. Rogers is an assistant professor of operations and supply chain management at Colorado State University. His primary research interests include the financial impact of supply chain sustainability, emerging logistics technologies, supply chain cybersecurity, and various other emerging purchasing and logistics issues. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the introduction and for inviting me to come speak to all of you today. So, as Kathy said, I'm a supply chain professor at Colorado State University here in Fort Collins, Colorado. But before that, I was a returns manager for Amazon. And I've focused a lot on reverse logistics, both during my career in practice and then afterwards when I decided, it might be more fun to just talk to people about supply chains rather than do them myself. So I've focused on both it during my career in business and then as an academic as well. And it's a fascinating topic. You can see these sort of pictures here of a typical sort of returns warehouse. And actually I made this with an AI, but it's very similar to what they look like. Just pallets of mixed stuff. You never know with your returns how the condition will be, what will come back. It's very different from forward retail because in forward retail you have a plan. With reverse logistics, everything's a surprise. It's sort of the the old Forrest Gump saying, returns like a box of chocolates. You never know what's going to be there. By the way, I appreciate always being able to talk to a group like this about it because 19-year-olds have no idea who Forrest Gump is, and I'm hoping at least some of the people in the audience today do. But anything can come in through a return. I mean, we got stuff we didn't even sell. We'd get lawnmowers back. I never sold lawnmowers. One time, actually, it was right around this time of the year. Somebody sent back a big box of toys, and inside that box of toys was somebody's keys. And when we called them and said, "Hey, I think we found your keys. Did you mean to send these back to us?" And he said, "No, my son was in trouble and he was mad. So I sent his toys back. I guess he was mad at me, so he took my car keys." And then I just under his voice, I heard him say, "Ethan." And maybe Ethan deserved to have his toys sent back. I don't know. But the point is, things come into companies, and then you need to figure out what to do with these. And that is a process that's unlike forward logistics. Sort of the normal flow, and I'll just put this up here quickly. We're not going to go through every step, but I know you have these slides later. Things come into companies, recalls, returns, maybe excess inventory. So a lot of times it might not even be something that was sold before, but we're overstocked. We're going to talk about secondary markets in a minute. And secondary markets are actually 70% of the goods that go through these sort of alternate channels are actually overstocks. About 30% are returns because it might be something like this is a picture I took at the Target right about a mile from my house in August. And, back to school was going on. They're selling a lot of Colorado State stuff, and there's some Colorado State things for, kids and babies. And then in the middle, I think something for University of South Florida. Now, I don't know what the South Florida market is like here in Fort Collins, but I can't imagine that's a big seller. But clearly somebody thought, well, same colors, an animal with horns, we'll just put it on the shelf. And so that's the kind of thing that will probably be overstocked. And there's a lot of different ways this can go. You sort of have, when you have a return or an overstock, sort of a menu of options. Ideally, what you'd like to do, you just like to put it back in stock. Now, when you put something back in stock, maybe you don't get as much money from it. You can kind of see, here we go, we're reselling, Easter baskets or whatever. Or maybe we can rebuild it, refurbish. Remanufacturing is a really important part of sustainability with returns. At a previous job I had, when we get something back, say like strollers or something with a safety component, I think once a quarter, we would have our stroller suppliers come back out from Britax, and they would, instead of throwing away something that had maybe not been used that much, they'd come out with big boxes of wheels and belts and brakes and everything else you need to make a stroller safe, and they would remanufacture them right in the back of our Amazon facility so that we didn't have to just throw something away. And then when you go down the line, you could break it down, donate, recycle, and then destroying. And destroying is always, putting something in the landfill is always the last option for a retailer. Not just because it's not green, because obviously it's not green, but you can recover a lot of value from something if you sell it through some of these alternate channels. These alternate channels have really grown over the last 3 years. You throw something away, you have to pay to throw it away. You have to pay for the big rollaway trailers or the disposal folks to come up. And so it's always, always, always the very last resort. Let me tell you why. Why does Apple, for instance, want you to bring your phones back to you, or bring your phones back to them and you get a new one? Well, because they pull these apart and they get the rare earth metals out of them. They stopped sort of publishing the numbers because I think they didn't want people to know how high the number was. But 2018 is the last thing we have from Apple in terms of rare metal recovery from phones. And that year they pulled out $40 million of gold from old phones, and also platinum and silver and all kinds of things. So if we can get you to not throw it away, that's what we'd like to do. Now, this seems pretty straightforward so far. We have this sort of linear process in front of you. The problem is, in actual practice, it's not linear. What an actual sort of flows might look like through secondary markets is this. It's kind of all over the place. Secondary markets, which are, so let's say we get something back. We're Target or Costco or whoever. We get a return back and we decide we can't resell it ourselves. Okay, what are we going to do with it? Well, maybe we can return it to our supplier. That'd be great. There's usually limits on that, though. All right, if not, then we're going to have to use something called secondary markets. And secondary markets are alternative flows where products can be sold in a way that keeps them out of landfills. Because remember, that is our main goal. We don't want to throw stuff away from an economic perspective, and then also, of course, environmental. And so if we don't throw things away, then where will it go? Well, a lot of times the first step will be it'll go through a number of salvage dealers. Salvage dealers would be the ones taking those big pallets like the ones I had on sort of the title slide, where it's just a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe we don't know how we're going to use it, but we will send it to an auction house or a pawn shop or whatever. And a lot of times, let's say it goes to one of these auction houses, what'll happen is you'll sort through. It's kind of like if you ever seen the show Storage Wars. We'll sort through all the stuff and we'll say, okay, put all the lunch boxes over here, all the shoes over here, all the pants over here, whatever we have, and we'll group them together because when we group them together, then maybe the dollar store or some value retailers want to come buy it because it's a nice group of stuff. You can go through several layers of the salvage dealers as we move through. Traditionally we have between 3 or 4. I have seen though as many. I have seen though as many as 10 in one of these before. Okay, so here's sort of what the flows look like. A next logical question might be, well, how big is this? How important is this to the overall economy? And it's something I've been tracking since I was a student back in 2008, and I've tracked every year through. We have the 2023 numbers. Obviously, 2024 is not done yet, so we don't have those quite yet. But look at how this has grown. So this is just the secondary market in the U.S. So all those entities we were talking about a minute ago, salvage dealers, charities, pawn shops, value retailers, outlet malls, auctions, those are all in here. And you can see in 2008, when we started tracking this, it was about $300 billion. Today, it's just over $800 billion. When you pull back and think about what that is 3% of US GDP, okay? Say that one more time. It's 3% of US GDP are the things that we returned or were overstocked. It's a gigantic, gigantic number. To put that in perspective, how big it is, secondary markets are bigger than our spending on the US Departments of Education, Transportation, two which are very important to me, by the way, as a logistics professor, agriculture, justice, homeland security, and Medicare combined. It's bigger than all of those are spending on all of those departments combined. It was actually bigger than e-commerce until we hit 2020. And why is this growing so quickly? Well, we've never been more liberal with our returns policies. People think that they should be able to return anything they want whenever they want. I mean, I'm sure the folks on this call think that. I'll tell you who really thinks that. The kids in my class. A college freshman this year, I don't want to bum anybody out this early in the morning. A college freshman this year was born in 2006. They've never lived in a world. They've never lived in a world without just free, easy returns. It's part of business. And the other thing they expect is this idea of an infinite shelf. When you shop online, you, me, maybe if we're a few years older, we remember going to stores and being like, well, here's the 3 colors they have of this shirt. That's it. Online, there's this expectation of the infinite shelf. And the infinite shelf says we should be able to get whatever we want, basically, in a wide variety of selections, which means a lot of times we have to have too much inventory or more inventory than we normally have for the retail level. And that adds to that category of overstocks. Because remember, the stuff flowing through here, about 70% overstocks, 30% returns. The breakdown, by the way, of what makes up this 807 billion, and I know we got 20 minutes, so I'm trying to move here. You can kind of see that the biggest piece are salvage dealers. And again, it might go through salvage dealers more than once, this return stuff. Might also pass through value retailers, online auctions, factory outlets. A value retailer would be like Kohl's or maybe a TJ Maxx or a Ross. TJ Maxx and Ross, they have stuff that maybe Macy's had 3 months ago. And people like going to those places because they're cheaper and you get a really wide selection of stuff you can possibly get. The company that I think most sort of epitomizes that movement towards value retailers, Nordstrom. There is now 100 more Nordstrom racks than there are Nordstroms. They stopped reporting the sales breakouts in their 10Ks. Now they combine it with online and stuff between racks and regular Nordstrom stores because I don't think they wanted people to realize that really they're a value retailer now. They want sort of the brand of what Nordstrom has always been. And so this is sort of where things are going. Now, what are the after effects of this? Well, I'm sure most people on this call have heard of the retail apocalypse. This is just and I kind of collect these as new announcements come out. Regular sort of traditional retail stores closing. That yellow arrow there points at, J.C. Penney, Macy's, places like that, because when those close, usually what that means is a whole mall is closing with them. And a lot of people see something like that and they think, well, that's because of e-commerce. And e-commerce is absolutely a part of it, no doubt about it. But let's look at the stores that are replacing them. Look at this. You can see from 15 to 22, and I need to update it to include 23. From 15 to 22, look at the stores that are really increasing in the US. Dollar stores and sort of TJ Maxx, Ross, those value retailers, and then Five Below, Ollie's. These are all places that sell overstocked goods, returned goods. And so really what's happening, it's not just e-commerce. It's that we're moving from sort of the traditional model where the focus was really on the primary consumer. So we're going to buy something, sell for full price, et cetera, et cetera. Well, as we've gone through economic cycles and as we've realized consumers now expect returns. They expect this wide variety of product, and we need to dispose of this stuff sustainably. We've seen a real move towards these secondary market stores. And really what they provide is two things in terms of sustainability. We're keeping things out of landfills. Those salvage dealers, all that stuff in the secondary market, they don't have anywhere to sell this stuff unless we have these Dollar Trees or Five Belows or places like that. So these stores keep things out of landfills. The second thing that does is these provide a social good because what it does is it allows folks to buy high quality items that were returned or overstocked, meant to sell somewhere else at affordable prices. And a lot of these places, like, especially Family Dollar, which is part of Dollar Tree, would be the biggest example of this. A lot of times, if you go through a small town, I'm from Nevada, there's small towns all over the place. There's really only two cities. And then there's all these small towns between. They don't have a Walmart, but they might have a Family Dollar. And those Family Dollars exist in places that would otherwise be retail deserts. And those are really a way, especially a lot of them are near military bases and out in rural areas. They're really a way to bring product to all those folks that might live further away. And all of that is facilitated through secondary markets. Now, I've got some more slides that we can go through here. I'm trying to be conscious on time. And as we saw a minute ago, good. So there's some questions. So this one is from Emily Barker from East Minnesota. I'm trying to wrap my head around the scope of transportation shipping involved in the salvage markets. Is any attempt to aggregate regionally to minimize shipping? Emily, that's a fantastic question. So yes, there is a lot of shipping that has to happen, a lot of moving pieces around, for returns. And so one of the things that's really happened, Emily, is there's been a movement to consolidate returns. So that's why maybe you see things like you make a return to Kohl's when you have an Amazon return, or you go to a UPS store, because it's very inefficient for a truck to come to your house, especially for in e-commerce. This is huge because e-commerce is 2 to 3x bigger, the returns from e-commerce, because you can't try the shirt on if you buy it online. And so what you try to do then is, well, we'll move towards consolidation somewhere else. And you also have things like Amazon now has their own sort of return center just in Kentucky. Back when I was there 10 years ago, we did returns at all the individual stores. Now everything goes to one place. And a lot of that is to your point, we're consolidating the transportation needed because, it's not incredibly green, obviously, to have a truck going to everybody's house. And it's also not as efficient and certainly not cheaper for companies to do that. It was a lot cheaper when you used to just have to bring the bring the return back to the store. The next question was from Kristen Fitzgerald from the EPA. You track the amount of retail goods that are subject to destroy disposition and prevented to going into the secondary market. Yeah, so there's certainly some goods like underwear, for instance, cannot go if it's out of the package, that can't go into the secondary market. And so we try to track that stuff. For the most part, though, because we're working with these companies here like Dollar Tree or TJ Maxx, it's hard for us to see the things that don't get there. We do try to make an allowance for things that are destroyed. That being said, when we talk to retailers, they really like I said early on, Kristen, they really try to keep things out of landfills. And so anything you can do to prevent it, they are trying to do. But in terms of like a good number, oh, it's 12%, it's 10%. The thing is that really changes by by industry. Apparel, the amount you're going to throw away is going to be higher for sure. Something like electronics hopefully can be reworked. You know, there's a lot of regulations now. You might remember when H&M was like cutting up clothes behind the store in New York, and in France, the same thing happened with Burberry. There's regulations now saying, hey, don't do that. And you know, hopefully instead donate it at the very least, get some tax credits back or something. Heather said, do I have the data for the disposals from these secondary markets? So I think that's maybe a similar question. So Heather, almost all of this stuff that I'm talking about gets sold on to a consumer. These are the things that are not thrown away. So that 807 billion that I showed you at the beginning of this, that's 807 billion that secondary markets are keeping out of landfills. Again, what goes to that is hard to say. I will say that we do have some estimates for the overall size of returns. I'll skip forward through some of this stuff. You know, and returns, like I said, is really a big piece. This is just returns in the U.S. is $700 billion. Okay, so of the 800 billion that I showed you in the beginning, of the 800 billion that I show, and these are numbers we've also come up with ourselves, and I've talked to the NRF people about how they do theirs. We're a little bit different. Our numbers is a little lower for overall, a little higher for holiday returns. Of that 700 billion, we think probably some around 300 billion is what goes into those secondary markets. So that's 400 billion that we don't necessarily know about. Now, that 400 billion is not all being thrown away. A lot of that 400 billion is being resold in store. So if it's resold in store, we're not capturing that ourselves if we're putting it on like a discount bin or something. Or if it's being returned to whoever we got it from, return to supplier, then we're not capturing that either. That probably accounts for 100 to 150 billion of this. And so then you think, all right, well, that's maybe 450 billion accounted for of the 700. And so then maybe the rest of that, I would imagine not all that's being thrown away. I think it's probably a lower number than that. But you can sort of start getting this stuff by the back of the envelope. The thing is, as you can see, the scale is just huge with this. And so it's hard to prevent things from being thrown away. You know, annual returns in the US last year is 700 billion. That's the same size as the GDP of Belgium. So if something is like, hey, we want it not blue, that's the same as Belgium. Just our holiday returns, the things that were December, January, that's the same size as the GDP of the Ukraine.
So
And
Zach, pardon me, just a quick time check. This is so fascinating, but I think I can only give you about a
I
couple
can
more
feel
minutes.
myself going
Thank you.
long here. Sorry, I was trying to get to all the questions as fast as I
Yeah,
can.
and I appreciate it. Like I'd say just like maybe 2 more minutes though, and then we'd have to wrap. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want everyone else to have time here. Jen Louie asked about the name of the store in Kentucky. The thing in Kentucky, Jen, that I was talking about is actually Amazon has centralized all the returns now. Because now having all the returns centralized, now all the trucks just go to one place. And so you can cut down on emissions and also cost. John asked about returns exported to other countries from UC San Diego. So John, one of the things, yes, absolutely. A lot of returns move to other countries. Many of them, they'll go through these same channels. So they might go through a salvage dealer, like say Inmar or something like that, and then move into retailers in Mexico or other places. Now, some of the returns move to other countries, or especially overstocks, move to other countries as like sort of write-off donations. Like for instance, as many of you are probably aware, Colorado State just won the Mountain West volleyball tournament. I'm sure everybody else watched it too. And so they had shirts that said Colorado State Mountain West volleyball champions. The team they played, I think San Jose State, well, they obviously didn't get those shirts. So you can send those shirts into Mexico or Latin America or somewhere, and we can do that as a write-off. So that's part of the overstocks you're talking about. I've got a lot more questions here, but I think probably I need to be respectful of all the other great speakers we have, and maybe that should be the last one. I'll try to write these ones down though, and if someone could send them to me, I'll try to respond to them. It's the last day of school at CSU, so I will have time after today to respond to more of these.
This
Zach,
is
if you could
fantastic.
also share your email with everyone. I don't know if you have in your last
Sure, yeah. Let me
slideshow.
I will put it into the chat right now. My email. It's my name, exactly like how it's spelled, at California State got CSU.edu. So I'm at colostate.edu. I just put it into the chat here. I'd be happy to speak to folks because I am about to have no class for a month. So
well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this. And we really want to respect your time as well. We know you have your last class shortly, and we want to also get the questions in for you right up front. So we really appreciate this, and also your willingness to just go right out into the chat and answer them directly, Zach. So
sure. No, like I said, my day job is to make this interesting for 19-year-olds at 8 a.m. So this was great. This is no problem for me.
And I already see someone in the chat saying, come back to another webinar. So you may see that request coming your way. So thank you, and best of luck with your class. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Good to see everyone. Bye.
And so I'm going to introduce our next speaker. And so we have Dr. Najati Ertekin here from the University of Minnesota. Feel free to bring up your presentation as I introduced you. He's the Associate Professor in Supply Chain and Operations Department at the Carlson School of Management at the U Minnesota. His primary research interests center on retail operations and the interface of marketing, store labor, and behavioral aspects of consumer returns. So welcome, Dr. Ertekin. The floor is yours.
Are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, looks great.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Kathy, for the nice introduction and moderating this forum. I'm very happy to virtually connect with all of you today. I will basically pick from where Zach left and take you a step back to talk about the retail and consumer side of reverse logistics. The presentation you will see in a bit reflects most of my last 10 years of academic research on consumer returns in retailing. Retail consumer returns have experienced a significant jump right after pandemic, and based on the most recent data, the annual value of return products in the US reached roughly $740 billion in 2023, representing around 15% of sales. It's well understood that these returns are costly for both manufacturers and retailers. More importantly, they harm the environment as well. It's estimated that 6 billion pounds of returned items end up in landfills in each year. These create very bad press for retailers. Perhaps one recent example is the news about Amazon disposing more than 130,000 returned items at one of its UK warehouses to landfill and creating environmental waste. This is particularly sad when one knows that 80% of those returned items ending up in landfill are indeed all functional and not defective. So what is the solution? Can the retailers simply not allow any returns so that they can avoid return-related costs and save the planet? Unfortunately, this solution is not as reasonable as it sounds. Returns are like a double-edged sword for retailers. While allowing returns create all the problems I have just shared with you, they are also known to substantially increase sales. I will show you the findings from two research studies. The first one is conducted by Bauer and Maxim back in 2012. The study randomly assigns retail customers to two groups where one group can return their products for free, whereas the other group have to pay a fee for any returned item. The authors show that in terms of spending 2 years prior to a return event, these two groups are identical in the sense that they spend similar amounts with the retailer. However, after experiencing different return policies, those who paid a fee for their returns reduced their spending within the next 2 years from $400 to $80, whereas those who were able to return for free increased their spending from $400 to $1,100, signifying the effect of lenient return policies on sales. Another study is the one that I conducted. In this research, motivated by the trend in the industry towards shortening the return time windows and thus making the return policy stricter, I examined how such return policy change influences sales, returns, and overall profitability. For this research, I collaborated with a retailer that changed its return policy from 100 days to 60 days. I found that such restriction decreases returns by almost 3 percentage points, which was roughly a 25% reduction in returns. However, on the negative side, it also reduced sales by 8%. The overall effect on profit was unfortunately negative for the retailer. These and similar studies make it clear for retailers that not allowing returns or tightening return policies are not financially viable solutions. This is actually not surprising because returns have been in the DNAs of the US culture for 150 years. People expect and demand retailers to allow returns since the first return policy designed by Montgomery Ward back in 1875. Therefore, not allowing returns strongly backfires for retailers. Does that mean that we have to suck it up and live with these undesirable returns as is? Based on my research over the last 10 years, the answer is no. Retailers can indeed follow a holistic approach to better manage consumer returns. Consider the following customer journey that starts with a purchase and ends with a return. In this journey, there are many points where retailers can leverage to minimize the negative impact of returns. First, they can follow certain strategies to prevent returns from happening. These include offering high-quality products, delivering high-quality service at the point of purchase, using technologies to provide better information to customers, and providing after-sales support aiming to help customers understand their purchases better. Second, even in this case, recognizing that some customers will return their purchases, retailers offer a return policy to ensure customer satisfaction and manage the return events to enhance customer relationship. Lastly, once they have these returned items, they can adopt more efficient disposition methods as opposed to costly and environmentally harmful methods. Being effective in this holistic approach requires to understand how and why consumers return. Talking about legitimate returns, which represent 90% of all returns, customers typically make a purchase decision with uncertainty about the products. They may have some idea about the product, but they do not have full information typically. For instance, a customer may buy a laptop based on certain features. However, whether that laptop is compatible and efficient in, let's say, running a computationally intense program can be identified only after the customer used the laptop, which happens after the purchase. I call this period the trial period. During the trial period, customers learn more about the product, and eventually, if they see a fit, they are happy and keep it. Otherwise, they decide to return. With respect to return prevention, this theory motivates two potential solutions. First, retailers can implement certain practices to minimize uncertainty with a purchase, such as using website technology for online purchases, facilitating online reviews, or offering high in-store service quality. Second, retailers are creative in the sense that they come up with a lot of programs to induce demand. When designing those programs, they can consider the potential impact on returns and fine-tune the programs accordingly. Let me give you an example on each solution. In this research study, collaborating with a brick-and-mortar retailer, I examined how improving salesperson competence, salesperson friendliness, and store environment, the three important dimensions of retail service quality, at the point of purchase can influence returns. I found that engaging better with customers during the purchase helps them make more informed and accurate decisions, which later reduces returns. This reduction in returns achieved for the focal retailer was equal to millions of dollars of savings. The second example is about a retailer program of offering promotions. Many retailers offer promotions as stake discounts, such as get 20% off plus an additional 15% off. In this research, collaborating with a retailer that offers promotions throughout the year, I compared how stack discounts compared to their economically equivalent single discount influence sales and returns. Before this study, it was clear in academia and practice that stack discounts were always better than single discounts. Consider this example for a product that's priced at $100. During the promotion week, let's say that we will sell it for $60. I can frame this discount as a single discount and say that the product is 40% off. Or I can say that the product is 20% off plus an extra 25% off. With the first 20%, the price comes down to $80, and 25% discount on $80 brings the final price to, again, $60. While the final price is identical between the two strategies, retailers make more sales under the stack discount scenario. The reason is that customers cannot do the math. With stack discounts, they think they are getting a total of 45% discount, where in fact the true discount is only 40%. Consistent with the literature and retail practice, I find that sales are roughly 5% higher when discounts are framed as stacked as opposed to single. However, I also found that stack discounts not only increase sales, they also inflate returns by 5 percentage points, which is almost 40% increase in return rates. Therefore, when returns are costly, the increase in return rates can outweigh the increase in sales, making stack discounts less profitable than single discounts. The result of this research was that, as opposed to the practice and literature, for certain products that I characterize as those with, let's say, thin margin, high returns, and high salvage value, discounts should be framed as single, not as stacked. Now, moving to the return moment, the moment customers decide to return and show up in a store or start the online return process, I find that managing that step to ensure customer satisfaction is key to customer loyalty. In this study, I worked with a retailer that allowed me to collect data from around 8,000 customers during their return events. And when customers return something, retailers would like them to exchange their return with another product to keep the money. Therefore, in some stores, they might intentionally or unintentionally create pressure on customers during a return event. I find that doing so is actually very tricky. If customers are not satisfied with their returns, forcing them to exchange their returns with another product will decrease their future purchase probability by 40% compared to a dissatisfied customer who did not exchange and simply got her refund back. The best solution for retailers is to first make sure that customer is satisfied with the return process. And in that case, a happy customer who exchanged or who simply got her refund will both have high probability of repurchase in the future. Lastly, the final step for retailers is the return disposition. Traditionally, retailers send some returns back to manufacturers, sell them to third-party liquidators, recycle, donate to charity, or, as I showed you in the beginning, dispose them to landfill. There are several anecdotal notes indicating that these disposition methods are actually costly for retailers, and some of them harm the environment. Through these methods, they can recover at most 10 to 20% of the original value of the returned items. In another project, I studied an alternative disposition method, which is selling returns as open box products in the main channel or in the main stores along with new products. We can see this practice across several durable goods product categories, including consumer electronics, furniture, sports gear, appliances, music instruments, and even jewelry. A common concern for retailers of this strategy is that open box products can cannibalize sales of new products. What I found is that when I consider profit from both new and open box products, despite such cannibalization, the retailer I collaborated with was able to increase her profit by 3.5% when selling returns as open box, as opposed to disposing them through alternative methods. To summarize, over 10 years of research makes it clear to me that returns will continue to be a significant part of retailing. However, they do not necessarily have to be a bad part of the business if retailers holistically manage their returns. As such, they can minimize the financial and environmental impact of returns by carefully implementing return prevention tactics, effectively disposing their returns, and probably, and more importantly, encouraging customers to shop for secondhand, particularly for durable goods, something that I have briefly touched with open box products. Just to give you an idea about the potential of this last point, looking at the statistics, I am really hopeful to see the trend among consumers towards the use of secondhand items. For instance, more than half of consumers shopped secondhand apparel in 2022, and 1 in 3 apparel items purchased that year was secondhand. The US market for second-hand apparel is projected to reach $70 billion in 2-3 years. And if you look at this figure on the right, you will see that second-hand use is beyond apparel and also significant for shoes, books, accessories, furniture, consumer electronics, and many other product categories. I believe this behavior change towards second-hand use will be critical to minimize the negative impact of returns, and more importantly, such potential reuse will decrease waste, conserve non-renewable global resources, and leave a better world for future generations. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Erdogan. That was fascinating. So for Dr. Erdogan and the speakers that follow, we're going to hold our questions to the Q&A segment that we're going to have at the end after they all complete their presentations. So by all means, I invite you to put your questions in the chat as you think of them. And then, as I mentioned, we will have a full Q&A after all presentations are complete. So we're going to go from the big picture down to a retailer at this point. We are going to switch gears and welcome in our folks from Home Depot. So our next speakers lead the reverse logistics program for Home Depot. I'd like to welcome Lindsay Tornello and Troy Campbell to the conversation. Feel free to bring up your presentation as I do your introduction. Lindsay is responsible for developing and implementing innovative strategies to promote recycling, reduce the carbon footprint, create circularity programs, and enhance sustainability practices for Home Depot. And Troy Campbell has worked in logistics for over 35 years, 29 of those with Home Depot supply chain, in the last 13 years focusing solely on reverse logistics. For the past 4 years, Troy has been the Director of Reverse Logistics Operations, responsible for Home Depot's 4 return centers throughout the U.S. that support the returns of over 1.9 billion in goods. So welcome both of you, and the floor is yours.
Well, great. Thank you, Kathy, for that introduction. Really appreciate it and glad to be here today. I'll kick it off on a few slides about our supply chain, a little bit about reverse, and then hand it over to Lindsay to talk about some of the recyclable and sustainability things we're doing with Home Depot. And I love the quote that Zach redid with Forrest Gump, because I think I'm going to steal that, because he is absolutely right when he talks about you never know what you're going to get. You know, in our 4 facilities across the country, I joke with our folks that every day is like Christmas, because you don't know what's going to come in those trailers when we unload them. And that's just another way to look at that. You know, we get things from all of our stores across the country, and there's just a amazing difference of things we get in, plus the online, the endless shelf that he talked about. So Home Depot, some of the folks may not know much about, or maybe you do, you just know the orange store at the corner you go visit every now and then, but we have over 2,000 stores across the country, 182 in Canada and 138 in Mexico. So those stores, we actually support with the reverse business, about 1,700 of those stores. We don't have any reverse support with Canada and Mexico at this time, although there's discussions there. So in 2023, Home Depot did $152 billion worth of sales, and Home Depot is just not Home Depot. Home Depot has many other businesses that you may not know about that help kind of drive the business that we all know about with the orange building. Most recently, on the right there, you see Temco. You hear a lot about our pro saturation, what we want to do, and we incorporated Temco into Home Depot's business, and they help us deliver a lot of that product to our pros. Some of the things we're doing within the supply chain to help the improvements, and a lot of the stuff is kind of sustainability related as well, right? You look at pallets, you think about the millions and millions of pallets that all manufacturers and companies use to ship product from place to place. Well, we're actually partnering with a lot of our vendors to not use pallets, to pack those on the floors of the trailers when we deliver them to us. And we also do the similar thing when we send them to our stores. We don't always use pallets. We don't have to, and it helps reduce that cost. And then you look at the number of trucks on the road. Home Depot's reduced 1.1 million miles driven a year just by using the space on there and sharing that with other folks. Sharing space with other companies who may need a half a truckload. We're only using a half truckload. We don't want that truck to go on the road and drive those miles half full. We want it full for really just keep reduce the emissions and to keep everyone happier when they get their product and not having to have multiple trucks sent. We do the same within our reverse centers. We actually share our trucks to get stuff to our salvage buyers because the trucks are already on our site. There's no sense in having additional truckloads brought in to ship this product out. We use the same ones on our buildings. And then a lot of things we do with technology, both to help schedule loads and help optimize loading of the trailers. We review those periodically just to make sure that our teams are doing the right thing to get the most cubes in the trailer, make the most space out of it, and making sure that the lanes that we take at one point in the year may be not as efficient, in the second half of the year. So we relook at those lanes and make sure that the lanes that we're driving are the right ones throughout the country to make sure we're, saving the emissions, making sure that, again, we have full truckloads, and they are lower costs for both parties involved. And then you look at our supply chain. So since 2023, we've had over 500 facilities in the supply chain. So that's, you think again, Home Depot, it's about 2,000 stores, 500 supply chain buildings supporting those stores. And then you look at reverse to really bring that down. 4 of those are just reverse buildings. So we have 4 sites supporting the entire U.S. states with all our reverse product. In 2023, moved 6 billion cubic feet of product through our supply chain. And again, like I mentioned on the prior slide, reduce supply chain miles driven. That's always a goal. We're always looking to see how we can reduce the miles driven from the thousands of truckloads out there. And really a kind of a fun fact, or not sure you knew, but we also partner with the environmental EPA to collect and report greenhouse gas emissions. And we were actually, thankfully enough, be able to put on their list of distinction for being received by which is only 5% of the smart waste shippers, that we were put on there. And we were one of the ones that were awarded that. And that's really just goes to show about the amount of work we're doing to watch the number of trucks that were on our roads and making sure that we're not sending additional trucks when not needed and making sure those trucks are full. So it was nice to see that all the work that Home Depot has done was awarded that from the EPA. And with that, I'll hand this over to Lindsay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Troy. So I think we've talked a lot about how we return things, what happens to them. But I think, a critical piece that hasn't been spoken about and is really key for Home Depot is looking at the entire process end to end. So we, in 2019, added circularity as a pillar. And part of that is going to our vendors and saying, before the item even gets there, before anybody even thinks about a return, how do we look at the packaging that this material is? Because, you do get the drill, but you got all the cardboard on the outside of it, right? You get the appliance, but that's full of styrofoam. And when you return your old appliance, that has CFCs in it. So how do companies also deal with those materials, not just the product itself, but the packaging and what comes after? So part of our circularity in 2023, we asked all of our private brands and achieved that no private brand for Home Depot uses EPS packaging anymore, which was a huge win for us, as well as a goal that all of our private brand fiber packaging for new SKUs in US and Canada stores will be compostable, recyclable, or recycled content by 2027. And we plan to reduce or convert over 200 million pounds of virgin plastic used in product to recycled or alternative material. So a lot of these materials that we recycle become materials that you can then go and purchase in the stores. So Glad Trash Bags has been a very long-running partner of ours, as well as this year we are launching HDX kitchen and outdoor trash bags. So all of that shrink wrap and stretch wrap that you see around all those products as you're walking through a Home Depot, and it's up in the overhead, our stores, our DCs, all recycle that material, and it is turned into kitchen trash bags, as well as outdoor trash bags. We also recycle metals, hard plastics, EPS foam packaging, as I was discussing with the appliances, as well as we recycle the CFC from reclaimed appliances. So the appliances that you return when you get your new fridge, your old fridge comes back, we recycle the CFCs from that as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Troy. So once we've kind of gotten through the packaging and talking about all of that, a lot of what was spoken about by the first presenter there, Dr. Rogers, we first look at repair. Is this something that we can repair? And as you can see, we have grown our repair of not only our third-party service providers, but large equipment repairs in our tool rental operations have grown significantly year over year as we continue to drive that, as well as repair of store use equipment. So you think about when you come to one of the stores, you rent a tool rental pressure washer. That is something that we are repairing and putting back into recirculation. So the second part of that is salvage, which is what a lot of this was discussed. So reselling on a secondary market, it has grown for Home Depot as well. Over 129,000 tons of returns were salvaged by us last year. And, oops, sorry, some of these questions are popping up here and they're getting my thing. And we have donated a little over in the past 3 years, almost 2.5 million pounds of material, as well as our tool rental transactions continue to increase year over year. So if you want to go to the next slide. So when we can't sell it, when we can't donate it, or when we cannot refurbish it and put it back on the floor, we talk about recycling. So Home Depot last year recycled over 30 million pounds of material. So 19.4 million pounds of plastic, 171,000 tons of metal, over 1.2 million pounds of rechargeable batteries, 254,000 tons of cardboard, lead acid batteries. It just goes on and on. We try to think about everything. Again, adding EPS foam where we cannot get it out outside of our private brands. We recycled 5.6 million pounds of EPS foam last year as well and turned that all into packaging within our stores. So I think that is all we've got for Home Depot, right, Troy?
That is correct. So back to you, Kathy. And
Excellent. Thank you. And I will open up for questions after our final speaker because I see a bunch of questions coming in. Thank you both. That was fascinating. And so important to hear all the things that you're already doing in this space to capture the value of these materials. So we have our final speaker today is Phoebe Yu. So Phoebe, welcome and feel free to open up your presentation as I do your introduction. Phoebe is the head of marketing for Replenish. And Replenish offers circularity solutions to power end-to-end material recovery from collection to destination. They have design and scaling of innovative business models and create successful backhauling networks for recyclable materials across 2 states. So welcome, Phoebe, and looks like your presentation is coming up now. And for those attending today, keep on putting your questions in the chat. And after Phoebe's presentation, we will have some time to go through all of them. Thank you. Yours, Phoebe.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you. I'm really grateful to be here, knowing what NCRE does for in the country, and I think we are a really one-of-a-kind solution. Love to follow the conversation regarding reverse logistics, but we're talking more about reverse logistics of the recyclable materials, not so much in terms of retail returns, which we think could learn a lot from the returns goods market. So today I'm here to talk a little bit about how reverse logistics really shapes our business, and that is mostly recyclable materials. So I think a lot of you on this call is very familiar with this number, which is 8.2%. And it is kind of a punch in the gut whenever I hear this number. 8.2% is the recycling rate of plastics around within the US. So this is based on EPA numbers from quite a few years ago. I think this number has since gone down. But what this number really means is really that about 92% of every single piece of plastic you have ever touched had gone to the landfills. So plastic alone, poses a huge problem within our ecosystem, our environment, and that is mostly because our current society takes the make waste model, just like some of the previous presenters have talked about in terms of items getting returned. We treat everything like it's it doesn't take natural resources and processes and to kind of make them and take them back. So we really think if there's a way for these recyclable materials, instead of them being viewed as trash or waste, right, if we can regard them as materials, what are some of the additional innovation we can bring to the market? So the new way is what Replenish here is recommending, which is really utilizing reverse logistics from collection to destination to bring this material back. Instead of it being, ending on the landfill, like the chart on the right-hand side, instead of it being disposed after the consumer has consumed it, to go back to the brand. There is a lot of value in this specific equation where the material, instead of it being waste, there's inherent value to the material for it to be recovered and for this material to be moved back into our domestic supply chain. And by this whole process, we have learned and we've seen a lot of value from this process where brands are able to build a lot of loyalty with their customers and their customers' customers. So in our experience, this whole process, for example, I'm about to bring up our one of our brand partners, which is PepsiCo within Copper Mountain Ski Resort, which some of you are familiar with because it's in Colorado. The materials that the brand are looking for the recycled plastic back into their supply chain. And this act of offering a process, a system, builds a lot of loyalty within their customers groups, which is Copper Mountain, for them to feel good about offering their products to their customers, and their customers understand this is a really good process, and they build loyalty towards both of these brands. So for us, it's a huge win-win on many aspects. And then we know the materials are circularized. To go in a little bit more, I'll leave this up to you to review because you get the slide deck afterwards. The little button on the lower left-hand side is a YouTube video that is a 4-minute video that kind of just highlights the process of how this specific process is implemented in Copper Mountain Ski Resort in Colorado. And then the right-hand side, if you don't mind, for some of you, take out your phone and just point your camera at that QR code, and it should pull up the QR code for the impact report for Copper Mountain Ski Resort. This location since November 2022 has moved close to 9 tons of plastic and aluminum through this system. So we are really, really proud. And Jeff Grasser, the senior operations manager at Copper Mountain Ski Resort, has received industry recognition for all the things that he's done. And since the launch of this project within Copper Mountain, we have seen a lot of ski resorts adopted. And I will show you, this is what the impact report looks like. If you didn't get a chance to scan the QR code, it shows collection on a month-to-month level. So October and November are slow season. There's no snow, so the resort is closed. But as of December, we're seeing a lot of volume come through. So we're really excited. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see we offer what's called a material tracker. In the center is a map that shows you the material destination, where this goes. And we're able to quantify that with data. So technology will one day save us all. I'll go into the details of this in a little bit. But if you had a chance to see the video, you'll get a very good understanding of this process. But I've kind of, we didn't have time to watch a 4-minute video, so I'm here to just break it down for you. The product starts with PepsiCo, selling materials, beverages into Copper Mountain Ski Resort. And Copper Mountain starts by collecting the material. On the image on the upper right-hand side, they have source separated collection, while the QR code is there to really engage their attendees, their patrons, to show them, this process has accountability. The materials are then sorted by event location staff, separating PET and aluminum. There's also other materials that we process as a company, but for this specific campaign, that is the material that we process. Then this material is stored in industrial size super sacks in a trailer offsite within the Copper Mountain Ski Resort. Once there is enough materials, the staff on site places an order with the local Pepsi distributor. They have a warehouse down in Denver, Colorado, which is the closest location that is sending beverages. They're delivering beverages multiple times a week. So one of those times that they deliver, they will then load their truck with these empty, clean, recyclable materials and haul it back to Denver, where this material it will be left with a local recycler operator to be processed into the bales that you see on the left-hand side. And then as they're processed into, for plastic, it's rPET, and for aluminum, it's aluminum sheets and slugs. Then they get remade into bottles. So we are able to ensure from collection to destination, this whole process is seamless, as well as with data verification. We come with receipts at every step of the way, which is very unique to Replenish. We're able to capture data of the weight of the material from beginning to the very end. So like I mentioned earlier, this is a very seamless and scalable approach. The backhauling, we think about sending materials to the customer. So from PepsiCo to Copper Mountain as a standard process, where if you are a retailer, if you are a brand that sells products, the delivery part of the system is absolutely, decked out. Everybody is working on how do we, get just in time, as frequently, as seamlessly as we can, just like one of the presenters mentioned earlier, the endless shelf. But the material, movement back to a destination is not as well thought out. And in this case, we are able to take advantage of the delivery. So the reverse logistic in this case is really just the backhauling. We collect materials directly from businesses that purchase these materials and consume them on site. We partner with brands that deliver the goods to haul them back. There are values on the material itself, as well as reductions in hauling costs. Like these locations are already paying for materials to be moved off site, like they're paying for waste, they're paying for recycling, and of course the carbon emissions. I'll have some numbers in the later slides as well. And of course we verify the material destination, so it's end-to-end seamless, as well as there is verification. So we Replenish, as a technology company, we're here to really provide that verification for the companies as well as the process. This is really just the suite of our solutions. We provide software tools for tracking and reporting. There are easy to use apps that takes seconds to schedule a pickup with volumes, as well as dashboards for brands to review and validate the information that they're getting. We offer things that are very, very close loops logistics for the brand, so that way there is connection at every point. Nothing ever gets lost in the shuffle, which a lot of times recycling tends to do. And our system is very standardized. We offer standard supplies, and making sure that the recycled materials goes back into the brand's supply chain. Works for all establishments of all types and sizes. And then I have another, reverse logistics in action, another case study that I want to talk more about just the business itself and its ability to work with their customers to move this material. Nacker Pepsi is one of the nation's one of the largest distributors for PepsiCo, and they're based in Flagstaff, Arizona. So if you haven't scanned the QR code for the Copper Mountain location, please go ahead and scan this one. This is the QR code for Nacker Pepsi for all of the products that they have moved. So instead of being a end customer of this material that is being collected, they're the ones that are actually moving the materials. They're the ones that are backhauling and actually processing the material back in Flagstaff, Arizona. They have since May 2022 backhauled 370,000 pounds of materials of I believe right now there's 4 different types, including number 4, which is LDPE stretch wrap, as well as cardboard, aluminum, and PET bottles and containers. They were praised for all of the work that they've done, because the city of Flagstaff and northern Arizona do not have a very well-versed recycling infrastructure. So they're here to bring this infrastructure to their customers, and also within the city bounds, which the city recognizes. They received a certificate as a green business. And one really, really important thing that we like to say is Knackered Pepsi, their customers that they're pulling materials back from, these are considered net new materials. I'm sure a lot of you on this call knows what that means. These materials, if they were not taking them back and recycling them, they would have ended up in the landfill. So this is very, very significant. This is basically
Phoebe,
a success.
sorry to interrupt. Just want to give you like maybe a 2-minute warning. Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I am almost there. And then the environmental impact, I think this is really, really important. There is monetization of the scrap material value. Some of you know in the business that clean PET, clean aluminum, clean cardboard, they're sold as commodities. So there is value for that to be captured by the backhauling partner. There is lower cost for customers. And of course, there is carbon emission reduction. So instead of sending a new truck for the materials to be pulled or waste management, etc., backhauling per pound, per ton mile reduces 0.4 pounds of CO2 emissions, and that is per mile. That adds up pretty significantly, and we are, really proud to be, a part of this process. And then lastly, I want to just chime in on some of the challenges that we have. Really, just buy-in from all stakeholders, from the brand level, from the HQ level. We need to have alignment on all levels. Sorting and labor-related tasks are generally a concern, but we have seen that not being an actual issue, we're able to address them very quickly. Ongoing communications on making sure things are seamless and able to address them and help people in the first 3 months is very, very crucial. And lastly, we have built a system with strong incentives, either it be with cost reduction, monetary rewards on the material value, and lowered carbon emission. These are very, very important to success. Again, alignment from all stakeholders. And lastly, I'll leave you with my information along with the deck, so you're able to get a hold of us. We are actively looking for partnerships, so please, reach out. Also, we have other work in progress with the cities as well.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. And we are going to move into our Q&A segment of this forum. So I would ask folks if you would please put your cameras on. We'd love to see who's here in the room with us. And there are a number of questions in the chat. So what I would like to do is welcome those who have put a question in the chat to one by one. I'll call you out, and if you would be interested in putting your mic on and just asking a question directly, so we can keep this more dialogue and more of a conversation style. I see Heather Trim has her hand up. I'll start with you, Heather.
Great, thank you. And Marianne, can you take off the pin? We want everybody to show, because we want this to be dialogue among all the audience as well. Those were terrific presentations. Thank you so much. And my first question is for Dr. Ertekin. You didn't mention, I'm wondering if you didn't mention if a particular price point of the item would influence the return. In other words, do luxury goods have more returns than cheap goods or something like that? Or if you mentioned it, I missed that. And my question for Home Depot is, who are you donating to? What type of entities do you donate to your surplus, your items? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Heather. So that's a great question. And to be frank, within 15 minutes, there's no way that I can cover the entire consumer returns literature. But you are absolutely right. So it's very well known in the literature that price is an important factor for consumer return behavior. So we know that when price is high, customers will be more likely to return. So price is a direct driver of the return. Simply because when you look at the reasons of returns, there are several survey studies showing that one major factor that customers decide to return is buyer's remorse. So what that means is that you make a purchase at a certain price, and if you happen to find a better deal somewhere else, so that will motivate you to return your initial purchase.
Interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then there was a question for Home Depot, right? About donations?
So the donations. So we partner with a company called Goods 360 to help us distribute our donations. But to be truthfully honest with you, the amount of volume we get sometimes overwhelms our donation partners. So we don't get to do that too often. So what we typically do is we wait for kind of requests. A lot of times our facilities and the regions or communities they're in, they'll get one-off requests from Girls and Boys Club to donate. They're looking for certain things, and we'll do that kind of donations more so than large volume. We've been down the path many times. These partners want Home Depot stuff to be donated, and then when we turn that faucet on, they usually can't continue to take that product, and so typically doesn't ends kind of soon, I should say.
Excellent. Thank you. So there is a question in the chat from Emily Barker. So Emily, if you would like to join us and read your question, I welcome that. If not, I can read it for you, but I'll give you a moment to
Hey.
put your. Are you there?
Hey,
Okay,
yeah,
great. Oh, I
yeah,
can't see
no, it's
everybody.
actually basically the same question. I was kind of being a little bit funny about it because my organization is working on helping start Fix the Clinics in Greater Minnesota, and so I said, "Do you donate that stuff for folks doing community Fix the Clinics, asking for a friend?" But I, I mean myself and my organization. So, you basically just answered how that process might work.
Yeah, and look, Emily, we do a lot of those little things like that for nonprofits who are looking for stuff to help drive that nonprofit. So if there's certain things you're looking for, there's always a possibility we can help out.
Yeah, I was going to say on our website, you can find there's a Team Depot link, and different groups can apply for assistance for all kinds of different things. Because again, you say to Home Depot, like Troy said, yeah, I want your donations. Well, it's windows and drills. And I mean, you just think about the myriad of products that we have. So there is directed if you go to our website and click on that Team Depot link. We love to help out all the small groups. So.
Fabulous. Thank you. Again, folks can raise your hand and then I will welcome you to the conversation. I see a question in the chat from Jennifer McDonald. I think this is for Home Depot, how does the reduction in the use of pallets impact product damage rate? And looks like someone else was echoing that question as well.
Great question. And it's funny that the initial reaction, you would think that it would increase damage rates. But in reality, by not utilizing the pallets, it decreases damage rates for a couple different reasons. I talked briefly about cube utilization in our trailers, and what that is making sure we pack the trailer tighter. So without pallets, and we can floor load these cartons, we are actually stacking floor to ceiling to wall. So there's less likely that product's moving, and a lot of that's done by hand. When you look at a pallet product built in, a lot of the damages we see in pallets are stuff that's maybe not wrapped properly from the pallet and it falls over and damage, or there's material handling equipment damage by the folks unloading or loading the product, hitting that stuff. So we see actually a decrease in product damage when we do the floor load and use less pallets.
Fascinating. Thank you. I see John Duell has his hand up. If you'd like to, yeah, there you go. Feel free to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you all very much for your presentations. My question is for Phoebe. Has Copper Mountain and Replenish considered avoiding single-use containers by offering Pepsi beverages in reusable beverage containers that are either provided by Copper Mountain and washed there for reuse or in the guest's own container?
Great question, John. Absolutely. So I visited Copper Mountain several times because of our partnership. They offer, open cups and fountain drinks as a standard. That is the standard at their cafeteria and etc. But if you think about the location itself, it is a ski resort, so people tend to travel, and they, I can't be skiing with my, open cups. So the bottles are unfortunately kind of a required part of the offering. However, what I can tell you is the location, the city has since began moving towards aluminum only for some of these ski resort facilities. So in addition to what we've been doing to activate a more circular, process and supply chain with data, the, local organizations and also like the government is making pushes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All for reuse. Thank you for that question. I see Harshini has their hand up. If you would like to put on your mic and ask away, Harshini. I'm not hearing anything yet.
Oh, hi. Sorry. I was
Okay,
figuring out how to turn on the mic. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's my first time here. One question I had for like either Home Depot or anybody else actually talked about how most of the stuff we're getting recycled into pellets and packaging materials for the future. How much of these materials are then being able to be recycled again and again, like aluminum, for instance, it's infinitely recyclable. What happens after one cycle of recycling? Have you guys thought about it, or what's generally happening in that area?
So we partner, our national partner for recycling is Radius, and they assist us in a lot of that. So yes, some of our materials come back that are already have been recycled once. You think about our totes, some of those are made out of recycled plastic. It really comes down to how much it's been recycled, I guess you could say. And so whether it can be recycled again or not is up to that manufacturing process. We do look for materials that can be multi-recycled, as you're kind of putting it.
Right.
As like I said, some of our totes, the plastic shelving can be recycled once and then recycled again. Some materials, can't, but we do drive that to try to make it to where the process is recyclable multi-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just another question.
Can I chime in on that as well?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Jeannie. So I think like this is I asked that question too before, when I was very first, introduced to Replenish and how we operate. I think the larger answer to this is like we don't have to worry too much about that right now in terms of how many times a recyclable material is recycled, because our recycling rate as a country is so low, especially on plastics, that we will always have way more virgin material like coming in versus recycled. Like I would love to have that problem 50 years, 20 years from now, where it's like, oh, all of these materials are all recycled so many times. Like there's like integrity problems to the chemical, the molecules or whatever, but we're not really there yet. But aluminum, you're right, infinite. We try to reuse that as many times as we possibly can.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And John Eldon has his hand up, so feel free to ask your question.
Looking for a handout, actually. Anyway, I'm very curious about all the different, the number 1 through number 7, all the different plastic types and commingling in the waste stream, sorting, which ones are genuinely recyclable or not, and then the hard plastics and whether you have the black carbon in them or not. So I see a lot of challenges there. Maybe somebody can enlighten me a little more on that.
I'm not sure if any of our speakers here today are prepared to speak to that, so because of the reuse topic, but if any feel like they'd like to give it a go, otherwise we might need, Lindsay, you look like you're ready to share.
I was going to say, I think from a retailer perspective, it's difficult for the sorting piece, right? It comes back in such mass quantity. And that's why, again, like Phoebe's saying, we're not doing what we need to be doing right now as a country with plastics and with these other materials. And that's what we need to be thinking towards and forward towards. I know it's something that we're looking at is how can we have recycle sort type centers, things like that. Within facilities, and that's going to be the way to go. A lot of it comes down to, again, partnering with the right company as a retailer, finding the right recycle company. Like we partner with Radius, saying, hey, if I send you all of this plastic, can you guys find the different outlets for it? It is a challenge, though. I agree. It's not as easy as you would like for it to be as a retailer to recycle. And I loved your cat, by the way. I saw your cat come by, and that's why I definitely wanted to answer your question.
Make a plug for that. There you go. That's your in, John. There's your in.
You got it.
So
Yeah,
I
we
think
adopted two black sisters from the pound about 4 months ago.
Nice. Thank you all. So Keith has his hand up. So Keith, if you'd like to jump into this. Oh, your mic is still, there you go.
Microphone, yeah. Sorry. Oh, thank you so much for the presentations and everything like that. Have any of the presenters are they aware of any trying to interests from their companies in trying a robust regenerative gasification for these hard to recycle materials and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's something within their purview or not.
Today's conversation is so much about reuse and reverse logistics.
That's right.
So I'd rather focus as best as we can our time on that. But I'm going to you though. Heather, I've got Heather Church raising her hand, and then Amy.
Thank you so much. My question is mostly on expanded polystyrene for Home Depot, Lindsay and Troy. You said that you shifted to another material and were able to get your name brand away from EPS packaging. I was curious if you could speak briefly on that because I'm guessing it is the molded fiber. But additionally, you said that you were repurposing that EPS. Are you when you say that, do you mean that you've worked with Radius to take it and they compress and do that work, or are you repurposing it in-house?
So in-house, we utilize cold compression densifiers to turn it into blocks. And then sell that material to different suppliers. So it's made into a lot of different things. So you think about foam board within our stores, it's made into that. And it's even made into other plastic products, air conditioning covers, things like that. Yes.
And since you have a condenser, which is great,
Yes.
Are you taking, and is Home Depot taking EPS block materials from other local organizations? I ask because it's a very tricky material, and for states like
Yes.
Oregon, Washington that have bans on these kinds of materials, it's been a very difficult outlet to find productive reuse measures, especially for things like coolers.
Yeah, currently we don't do it in the stores because it's limited to our appliance facilities and those aren't attached in a trans chain to them. But it is something that we are looking at as we know more and more states, which is fantastic, are looking at keeping this out of the landfill, as well as how do we expand that more into a public forum or into private entities. We are looking at that.
Great. Hope to hear more later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. Amy, you have your hand up. Amy Bloomfield. Feel free to ask your question.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to hear about everything going on in the space, and I really enjoyed all the presentations. I was wondering because there's also a lot coming to light about the volume of destroyed surplus returned goods. So I was wondering if anyone can speak to that, especially from a retailer kind of perspective.
Would any of our speakers be able to address that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
more specifically, what kind of question? Like, what are we doing with the destroyed products or?
Yeah, I guess because not everything can kind of be reused or recycled or re-enter the market, and there have been some things in the media about companies and the destruction of goods. So I was curious if anyone's been able to address this or help us understand why some of the goods are destroyed and can't re-enter the market, please.
Yeah, we haven't found much of that because we have quite a bit of salvage buyers throughout the country who will take all different levels of stuff. Some salvage buyers want, basically new in box, open once, and some salvage buyers literally will take the broken wrench because they have another wrench that they're gonna kind of make a full one. There's very unique businesses out there that we've been very fortunate to partner with that take just about everything. So we have hundreds of different buyers, and those buyers, like I said, will range from I only want this level of quality, and some buyers say I'll take whatever you got because I have a means to sell or make or kind of combine to make it whole again. There is some waste in it at the end of the day, but I'll be honest with you, that waste is pretty much limited once we go through our normal processes of recycle and salvage.
It's great to hear that. And I don't know if Dr. Erdogan has anything to add, but it may have been Dr. Rogers at the beginning that mentioned that apparel might be one of those sectors that more of it gets damaged. And I'd see some nods, perhaps as distinguished from the types of products that Home Depot would sell. But very interesting. Any other additions there before we go to the next question?
Yeah, maybe I think Troy provided a good overview of what can be done with those destroyed or distracted returned items. Just to remind, I think the proportion of those type of returns is smaller compared to what these retailers have to deal with. Like we are looking at maybe at most like 20% on average. 20% of all returns can be in that category. Actually, if you go to some certain industries, for instance, in the consumer electronics industry, the defective returns can be as low as only 5%. So what I would like to say is that it seems like there's a huge appetite about how we can recycle and make good use of all these returned items. Unfortunately, the reality is that like even I've been doing a research about solid waste management, zero waste management in particular. Even in certain programs that aim to recycle pretty much everything. So those programs typically start with a very ambitious goal of maybe achieving 70% of recycling rate. But even after many years, so the results are about maybe at most 30 35%. And I agree with Phoebe in this country. So that rate on average is 20%. And when you look at other countries, the pioneering countries would include, Germany, Denmark, Netherlands. You're going to see at most 65% recycling rates. Like these countries are really doing a good job in terms of recycling. So what happens to the remaining non-recycled part is a big question. So, when you think about the zero waste management, so the typical approach is that like everything should be recyclable except a few non-recyclable items, and that percentage should not exceed 10%. So theoretically, 90% of everything we generate, either in the form of returns or in the form of waste, should be able to be recycled. So there is a lot of studies happening on this domain, and definitely there's a huge room for improvement. Hopefully, all these discussions will lead to a better outcome in the future.
Indeed, indeed. And as reuse becomes a bigger part of that equation and conversation is a way to manage these materials that are already in circulation because of the upstream impacts as well. Emily, I'll let you ask the last question, and then I will pass it off to Mariani to close because we have just a couple minutes left.
Thanks, Kathy. My question is actually for Dr. Erdogan. You'd said in your presentation that through the process of all this reselling or resalvage, that they're able to recover about 10 to 20% of the original value. So I'm curious, is like the rest just written off as business loss, or how does that like economically work out? I don't understand enough of the economic side, so that's the part that I'm always curious about how it actually plays out. Also, hello from Minnesota. I'm here in the Twin Cities as well. So nice to have you here.
Hi, neighbor. Very nice to meet you. Great question. Probably, Home Depot can provide more accurate information on this, but when I look at the, overall retail industry, so the reason that retailers recover low value is simply because they perceive these returns as a cost center, and they have all the rights to think this way simply because of all the reverse logistics costs associated with returned items. And when it comes to buying new products, the general tendency among consumers is to favor unopened brand new products over secondhand products. And on top of that, many brand names actually have concerns about brand dilution. So when they have the option to sell these returned items in their primary channel, the main concern, even let's say it might be economically viable, they are really concerned about this brand dilution. So at the end of the day, customers return those products, and it may imply that something is wrong with that product in the first place. That's why they return. Right? So as a new customer, when you see that these returned items is displayed right next to the new item, you may have that perception, which may eventually influence the brand reputation in the long term. So this is actually a viable concern, even though we do not have scientific results about this, simply because there is no research yet about this specific concern. But that's the main concern I see among retailers that keeps them, away from trying to sell these returned items in the primary channels along with the new ones.
Interesting. Thank you very much. So interesting. I suppose we could go on for a long time because this is a fascinating area with a lot to it. I know I've learned a lot today, and I'm grateful to all the speakers and what you've shared. Lots of excellent engagement by our participants. And I'm going to hand this over to Mariani to close it out. But again, thank you so much to all of our speakers and those who engaged in the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you all. And just to finalize our NERC's Material Reuse Forum 7, Unpacking Reverse Logistics, the recordings, also the speakers' presentations are going to be on at NERC's website, nerc.org, and please check our programmation there. Also, our next events, we also always post it on there. So thank you everyone for participating and have a great day.
Thanks all.